Okay, hello, my friends. It is Wednesday, March 26, 2025, and this is a daily brief. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context in the war in Ukraine, and it's been quite a wild ride over the last couple of days. The battlefield's like the least interesting part because there's so much going on around ceasefire talks and other things, and who's accusing who of doing what. But let's look at this first. 1,280 Russians off the battlefield day over day, 5 tanks, 15 armored fighting vehicles, 17 artillery systems, 77 vehicles, and fuel tanks. And that brings the average up to 1,268 for the month of March, which is about 20 higher than in February. If we look at how many Shaheds were launched last night, Russia launched 117 Shahed drones, of which 56 were shot down, 48 were either suppressed or just didn't reach its target in one way or another. Russian drones hit Zelensky's hometown in its most massive strike on the city since the war began. So he grew up in a place called Kryvyi, and this town is just being pummeled just because of Zelensky, I think. Number of people yesterday, now this was the day before, not what happened last night, but the day before, number of people injured due to Russian missile attack on Sumy on 24 March rose to 106, including 23 children, city council reports. Again, just purely civilian targets. Now, again, this Kryvyi issue last night, it's just civilian targets, but there were fires, administrative buildings, storage facilities, an enterprise, 6 vehicles damaged. No fatalities or injuries are reported, though. So that was a good thing. Now, this is Anna from Ukraine talking about how Russia wants to persuade the U.S. that if they lift sanctions, Russia is prepared for temporary ceasefire in the Black Sea. This is ridiculous. I talked about this last night, and I said, look, nothing really happened because while there was supposed to be something in the Black Sea that goes into effect, there was supposed to be like they're waiting on lifting of sanctions or, recognizing territories or whatever before Russia actually comes to the table. Here's Anna talking about it, and let's hear what she has to say.
Hello guys, and pardon me, but this is real BS. Russia wants to persuade the United States that if they lift sanctions, Russia is prepared for the temporary ceasefire in the Black Sea. Forgetting one very important fact, Ukraine has already destroyed the Russian Black Sea fleet.
Yep.
The majority of their warships were upgraded to a scrap metal on the bottom of the Black Sea, and the leftovers escaped to Russia. And now they do not control the Black Sea. We are able to deliver the grain and anything we need to countries around the world because Ukraine controls the Black Sea, just as it should be. And Russia wants to trade this fake as the greatest achievement for the greatest deal maker, Donald Trump. Don't let them trick you. Share and subscribe. That's
okay. So they're dragging their feet. I mean, the Russians are just clearly dragging their feet. And the logic of this doesn't even make sense. And Applebaum says, why would anyone lift sanctions on Russia before Russia has proven it will abide by any kind of ceasefire? Well, that's actually a really good question. Now, Russia and Ukraine reportedly have not targeted each other's energy infrastructure for a week amid an agreement on a temporary moratorium on strikes against energy infrastructure. But again, this is from Euromaidan Press. And when you go into the article, there's more to it. There's at least 8 strikes on Ukrainian energy facilities that have been recorded since March 18th. Ukrainian presidential communications advisor has said on Twitter. The reality is that they're striking our energy facilities with bombs and attack drones and unmanned aerial vehicles. But it was March 18th. I believe that's the day that Putin said, hey, I'm calling off these drones. We're going to shoot down our own drones in order to stop this. But then there were still more that hit. So there have been at least 8 strikes. And while the Russians were doing that, they're blaming the Ukrainians for being the ones that are doing this, which is par for the course. The Russian Ministry of Defense has claimed that despite statements from Zelensky, Ukraine has continued its strikes on Russian energy infrastructure. 2 Ukrainian drones were reportedly downed off the coast of Crimea, targeting Jabolsky underground gas storage. Additionally, Ukrainian forces allegedly attacked energy facilities in Bryansk and Kursk regions, leaving several consumers without electricity. I don't know what the actual story is here, but there's actually no deal that's been taking, because both sides have not come to the agreement here yet. So, okay. And meanwhile, Russia has bombed itself at least 35 times in 2.5 months of 2025. Just between March 21st and 24th, Russia bombed itself 7 times. Russia bombed itself at least 165 times in 2024. So, wittingly or unwittingly, that's what the Russians have been doing. Zelensky was yesterday, I guess this was today. It's National Guard Day. It's National Guard of Ukraine Day, and to express his gratitude, he's handing out awards, and he's talking about the valuable service the National Guard does. Zelensky is masterful at seizing whatever the special day is or the anniversary of this or whatever to highlight what's important to Ukraine's health and success. Here, this is interesting. Almost every day we hear about strikes against targets in Russia, but we rarely get the full picture of their actual impact on the war. So Radio Liberty, which, by the way, a judge has just reversed the Trump administration's ban on Radio Liberty, and I'll talk about this in 3 big stories tonight. And Frontline Intelligence Insight have joined forces to analyze hundreds of data points to answer this question. So we found that strikes on Russia's energy sector caused at least $658 million in damage over the last 6 months. The real damage to the Russian energy sector and the economy as a whole may be higher. In at least 67 out of 100 cases, Ukrainian strikes were successful. So it's about 2 to 1 times they're successful as opposed to not successful. And here's a map of where the strikes have been. The highest number of successful strikes against targets inside Russia were recorded in November of 2024. The analyst is almost entirely based on impacts verified by geo-confirmed services. Now, why in November? Because just before November, what was the American election was early in November, and so after that there was lots of strikes. And then we see we see other maps and other comments about this here that are useful, like this. The destruction of Torpets Depot alone is estimated to have resulted in the loss of 30,000 to 160,000 tons of munitions. So that wasn't just on oil, but on armament. We determined that more than half of the recorded strikes between September and February had limited impact. So got to get the full picture and hear that as well. And let me see where else. I had another. Here it is. The largest strike on an oil facility in terms of total damage occurred in October 7th in Feodosia, annexed Crimea, where 11 tanks with a total volume of 69,000 cubic meters were destroyed. So that's a bigger picture about what's been going on with the oil strikes that you've been seeing on energy infrastructure. Okay, let's turn our attention to the battlefield. In the Prorovsk direction, Russian invaders led 68 assaults, which is crazy high given the number that we see here of only 1,280 casualties. 68 assaults is just, I wouldn't have called that. I would have thought based on the numbers, it would have been like 30 something, maybe 40. Akhmat Special Forces Commander Aludinov threatens Russian military punishment for looting in the Kursk region. That's because the Russians are looting in the Kursk region. Like that's a bit. It's kind of like when in the Magna Carta they say like you can't make me build a bridge against my will, or you can't take my corn. That's because people were making them build bridges against their will and taking their corn. So that's what's going on here. Okay, I'm not talking about the signal gate here because I talked about that yesterday in this video. I talked about it yesterday in this video preliminarily, and I'm going to talk about it again today later in another video, just kind of wrapping up what has happened since the thing broke. So I'm not going to talk about this. Here's Ryan Macbeth talking about why it happened and what's underneath this scandal.
Couple of things about that signal scandal story that's come out recently. I actually did a whole live stream on it, but it was a really long live stream. So I just wanted to give a couple of hot takes that maybe nobody else has thought of. So if you're new to the story, essentially some people in the Trump administration were having chats about classified information over Signal, which is a civilian messaging app that just goes on regular standard phones. And while the Signal app is encrypted end-to-end, that doesn't necessarily mean it's totally secure. For example, you can take a screenshot of the messages, and when it gets uploaded to iCloud, if your iCloud is compromised or someone has hacked your iCloud, now they have access to these selected signal messages.
So
And if you have an iPhone,
somebody wanted to challenge me about that yesterday and say, well, signals end-to-end encrypted. How could the Russians have broken through? They could break through in a number of different ways, but it's and he asked me to cite my sources about this. So here's a source. It's not like the source or anything, but as I understand, both the American government have said don't use Signal, and I'll show that in the next video. I understand from Greg Terry that the Ukrainian military is told not to use Signal at all because the Russians can get into it. So, okay, at any rate, that's all that. Yeah. Okay. Meanwhile, CIA Director John Radcliffe was saying this. Now, he's being grilled, and I'm not showing you the grilling here. I'm just showing you one little conclusion that he has when he's speaking before senators on Capitol Hill.
Russia has the battlefield advantage, is grinding forward slowly. I want to comment on that, however, to say that with regard to the Ukrainian resistance, the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian military have been underestimated for a period of several years now. And ultimately, I'm convinced from my reflections in observing from an intelligence standpoint that they will fight with their bare hands if they have to, if they don't have terms that are acceptable to an enduring peace.
I want you to hear that again. The Ukrainians will fight with their bare hands if they have to, if they don't get terms that are acceptable.
From my reflections in observing from an intelligence standpoint that they will fight with their bare hands if they have to, if they don't have terms that are acceptable to an enduring peace.
Wow, that's from our CIA director. Okay, two more stories and we'll be done. So General Alexander Pavlovich Lapin, he's gone missing in the Belgorod region where currently there are ongoing battles. He's suspected to have died. We don't know. We have not been able to confirm this, but he is he's a pretty big wig. He was or was, I don't know, the current chief of staff of all Russia's ground forces, and we don't know what happened to him. So that's where we are with that. Last story, Jake Bro's Invictus campaign is on, still going. It's been going for now, I think 4 days. Yesterday, when I highlighted this, they were at 700. Maybe this is the fifth day. I don't know. $705,000. Yesterday morning, when I highlighted this in the daily brief, today they're up to $784,000 on their way to $1 million campaign. So if you want to be part of that, just Google Jake Bro Invictus. I'll try to put the link down below. Thank you, my friends, for your time. Thank you for the likes and the